This is a true account of a moment when an ancient risk stopped waiting and took a town with it. In March of 2014, national attention was elsewhere. A commercial airliner had vanished over the Indian Ocean. Tensions in Eastern Europe were escalating. And in a quiet river valley in Washington state, a hillside that had moved before moved again, this time catastrophically. Landslides feel sudden. They often occur with little warning, move with shocking speed, and leave behind scenes that seem impossible to reconcile with what existed moments before. Because of that, they're easy to treat as surprises, events that appear out of nowhere. But landslides are rarely spontaneous. They are usually the final moment in a long, quiet process that unfolds over years, sometimes decades. The danger is real and often known, but it doesn't feel immediate. And when a risk doesn't feel immediate, it's easy to look past it, even when it's inevitable. This wasn't unprecedented. Entire communities have been altered, even erased by hillsides that moved when people assumed they wouldn't. And these events do not tend to announce themselves. They accumulate quietly, and then they happen. The community of Oso sat in a rural valley carved by the Stillaguamish River, roughly 50 miles north of Seattle. Homes were scattered along the riverbank. Many were modest, manufactured homes, small cabins, places chosen for their quiet and affordability. Some residents lived there for decades. Others were newer, drawn by the scenery and the sense of space. A 2-lane highway, State Route 530, ran through the valley. And above it all was a steep slope. The locals simply called it the hill. It was always there. And because it was always there, it rarely drew attention. The hill had a history. It had failed before. Not once, but repeatedly. Smaller landslides were documented as far back as the mid-20th century. A significant slide in 2006 had blocked the river. State and county geologists knew the slope was unstable. Reports existed. Maps were drawn. Aerial photograph comparisons over time showed the ground was moving, slowly, but persistently. The language describing the risk was careful and precise. It spoke in terms of probability and susceptibility, not speed or force. The concern was real, but abstract, aimed at some future undetermined time rather than the present moment. Words like potential, susceptible, and increased risk appeared again and again. What those words never conveyed was what failure would actually look like. Without that picture, the danger remained hypothetical. And without certainty, nothing forced change. Homes remained. People stayed. New structures were permitted. The road stayed open. Utilities were maintained. Children played. Neighbors waved. Mail was delivered. This wasn't negligence in the familiar sense. The information existed, but it lived in reports. Risk was understood academically, but academic understanding rarely creates urgency. And without urgency, nothing demanded action. On March 22nd, 2014, after weeks of heavy rain, the hillside collapsed. In less than a minute, an estimated 10 million cubic yards of earth broke free. The slide accelerated rapidly, moving at highway speeds across the valley floor. Homes were crushed, torn apart, and erased. There was no warning. 43 people were killed. The slide dammed the Stillaguamish River and created an impromptu lake behind an unstable wall of debris that threatened downstream flooding. The valley floor was buried under tens of feet of mud, trees, and wreckage. The ground that slid from the hill continued to shift and settle for many days. Familiar landmarks were gone, and from the air, the site no longer looked like a neighborhood. It looked like a quarry, a wide, raw scar where homes had once stood. First responders arrived within minutes. The debris field was unstable. Rain continued to fall. Secondary slides could break loose at any moment. Within days, search and rescue shifted reluctantly to recovery. Not because effort stopped, but because the physics of mud became incompatible with life. Investigations followed. In hindsight, the mechanics became clearer. But before the slide, risk had been described in averaged timelines. A 100-year event sounds like a calendar. In reality, it's a chance taken every year, and chance has no memory. Also belongs to the kind of disaster that fades quietly, that reminds us that risk does not announce itself. So here's an ounce. The danger was always there, waiting. And that's it, an ounce submitted for your consideration.